And today's topic for the episode, Tom, is why the hell don't you come up with topics, asshole?
I'm
Yeah.
trying to think of something. I don't have any ideas.
And that's the topic, baby, is ideas. See, you like
Sure.
that?
You know what? Sure.
You like that? Yeah. Yeah, so that's a thing, right? Being creative is hard. And
Yeah.
being and having topics for a podcast is even harder. So that's what this is our filler episode. Yay! We've reached episode 11, I think, and this is our
episode
filler
10.
episode. Oh, it is episode 10. Well, yeah, we're in double digits, huh? Well, look, hey, look at that. We're in double digits, baby.
Yeah, we're already out of ideas.
Yeah. Hey, well, that's better than some podcasts, Tom. Some podcasts get to episode 7 and then they stop uploading. So, we're batting 100 right now, with 0 ideas.
Yeah.
But that is real. So, like, we've talked about it before, because of, like, getting burnt out or just being sick or just, like, anything under the sun that kind of, like, fucks with your mojo, as Austin Powers would say. When it comes to, yeah, baby. That wasn't even Austin Powers. That was, like, Forrest Gump. No, but so, like, yeah.
Jenny.
Jenny.
I'm trying to draw guys.
Meeting?
What?
Can you have the meeting of the minds? Forrest Gump and Austin
Forrest
Powers.
Gump and Austin Powers.
Yeah,
baby!
Oh,
Jenny, this guy is scary. Why is he so
mojo?
Why is he so loud, Jenny?
Yeah.
This is fucking worthless.
No, it's not. No, see, because that's what happens when you have no ideas, and that's what we're getting on to. I
was also going to mention the idea of using limited tools because I'm doodling with my 1 pixel brush right now, so we can talk about both.
Oh yeah, we could do that too. Well, because I think that's a lot of I think the crux of a lot of people who it's not even burnt out. It's just like you just can't think of anything, so you just don't do anything, and I think we've talked about this before, but a very key thing that I got taught at a young age in college was from my English teacher, which is this: you got to write the first sentence and realize that you're not writing a masterpiece with the first sentence, right? You're gonna have to edit all of this shit because no one makes fucking Shakespeare in their first draft. So just get the first sentence down, and the rest will come after. And that's the same thing with art, right?
Like, I've tried to start writing a novel so many times and just got stuck on the first page every single time. It's so... Yeah. I tell myself, I know that intuitively, I just gotta get past the first page and then it'll all come to me later. But, I can't get past that mental block.
Yeah, it's not even...
incredibly difficult.
Yeah, and with writers especially, it's one of those things where you don't write a book in a day. There's a few authors that have, like the Stephen Kings and that one guy who made I Have No Mouth Yet I Must Scream. That guy made that book in a day, in a fucking sleep deprived fever dream. It's a fun kind of thing to look up and also read, but those are the very few and rare examples.
And those are unhealthy, crazy people.
Yeah, not to mention the fact those books, even though they are books, they're not that long. They're they're good 200-page books. They're fun to read.
Yeah, and Stephen King is openly that's what I mean by unhealthy. Stephen King openly talks about oh yeah, when I was writing books at my height, I was on fucking cocaine, going fucking wild, writing bullshit.
Addiction. Yeah, and
cocaine's not an opiate.
Yeah. Well, all right, well, just prove me wrong left and right. But anyways. What I was gonna say though is and we talked about this for a brief stint about how creatives will sometimes self-medicate and will rely on that for creative outflow because they just can't think of anything, or they're just so reliant on something that they need that substance to create, right? But at least that's what they say in their head, right? But in truth, what's really creating their novels is them. The whatever they use is just not necessarily hindering, but it's also not helping either. It's just a cope, right? It's an anchor, as some would say in the artist. So that's another thing. Rappers use this too. It's called an anchor, right? And this is going to go back into what Tom was saying about limitations. When rappers make music and they use lyrics, ideally you want to have a good like flow, as well as like a lot of variation in what you're saying, as well as it meaning something when you're saying it, right? And when a rapper says you use a lot of anchors, it tends to mean you use one specific word or like kind of phrases that always have like a nice clean rap or something that rhymes close to it. And
House, mouse,
when you,
blouse. You keep saying
yeah,
house over and over.
yeah, you keep using house, or like orange, door hinge. But
Orange.
no, yeah, but that's it's not good, because what it does for you in the short term is it's nice. It creates for being able to rap really fast, but what it does in the long term is it hinders your ability to like think on the fly and not rely so much on the one thing that you really like using in the rhyming scheme, right? And that's another thing in art, is when you become too reliant on the tools that you use to constantly create stuff, it can tend to sometimes make art even boring to you or feel repetitive. And then you kind of get not necessarily burnt out, but you get just bored with it. And you're like,
Mhm.
I've been doing the same shit since I was 3 years old. What do I need to do differently? And limitations are a really good tool for an artist. And yeah, we can kind of go into that. So talk about your limitations you're using right now, Tom.
So what I really like to do is either just draw in Microsoft Paint itself, or I will set up a pen in Clip Studio Paint that operates like an MS Paint brush. So like one pixel, no anti-aliasing, no pen pressure, no smoothing. It's just an MS Paint brush basically. It's the pencil tool from MS Paint.
As
Um,
God intended.
and it's extremely limiting, but it's also like just extremely satisfying to draw with. It feels just great to doodle with. So it's
Mm-hmm.
this nice in between where it's like there's not a lot you can do with it in terms of like complexity. You have to keep things very simple, but that also forces you to like choose your battles and focus. Like I've mentioned before, one of my favorite like art style tropes that I see occasionally is when an artist will focus on one spot that is the central point of the drawing, that is hyper detailed, and then as you kind of radiate out from that spot, the composition gets less and less and less clean. A really common example with like porn artists or anime artists will be they'll have a hyper detailed face, amazing eyelashes, eyes, beautiful hair, at least the bangs area. But then you look a little bit further out, and you look at the shape of the outside of the hair, and it's a little less detailed and a little bit more messy. You look at the boobs, and they're like much more scribbly. They have more visible lines. Then you go even further out, and you look at like the belly and the arms, and like that's all even sketchier. And like it keeps getting less and less detail as it goes out, but it's done in such a way that's extremely satisfying to look at. And if you see those artists, if you like, now that you know have that in your head, you might notice it on your like Twitter feed or whatever. They're usually using a very simple brush like that, not necessarily a pixel brush, but like the equivalent, a very thin, low smoothing sketching brush, usually a pencil or a marker, in like Clip Studio Paint, basically. And it's not like it's just fun because it's limiting. It's a simple brush. You're not like thinking about all the different ways you can use it because all it does is make lines. And so you're basically sculpting out of the page with lines the way you might with like a real actual pencil. You're not thinking about the complexities of like, well, how is this going to blend and all that like you would with like painting or something, or even more
Mm-hmm.
complicated normal brushes.
Yeah, and they go into that a little deeper. I think a lot of people can tend to get bogged down with because there's an opposite end to this, right? Where a lot of people starting out, maybe in digital for the first time, or just doing something different, like using charcoals or
Mm-hmm.
oils. You kind of get bogged down because you're starting from square one, and you're like, oh God, I don't know what to do, and you get this like decision paralysis, right? Where it's like,
Oh
well,
yeah.
do I use these blues or do I blend this? Like, I don't know what I need to be doing. And it's like, well, yeah, obviously you don't know because one, you're starting from scratch. Two, it could be handy to like look at what other people are doing. But three, and this is a big one, is you should add limiters to your new creative endeavors, because if you allow yourself, and especially for someone like Tom, right, who has this proficiency of being able to do a lot of sketches very fast, it can sometimes be very demotivating when you move to a different art medium and it's taking you like hours on end to do something. And in your mind, you're like, I could have just animated this. I could have just drawn this and it would have looked better and I could have done it faster. But that's not necessarily the process you're trying to improve because you're already good at that. The process you're trying to improve is the new one you're getting into, and bogging yourself down with the whole like, I could do it better this way if I didn't even bother learning something new, or I'm not even going to do this because it's just too much for me, is not, it's not a good mindset to have. And when you add limitations, it tends to be you get a lot of good creative stuff out of that. A good limitation I always recommend to people, because a lot of people are kind of transitioning into like 3D modeling, because now that the tech is just so good, like you can buy a normal ass PC and open up Blender and not have any crazy like lag spikes or render failures, because of hardware limitations. Now it's all just kind of software stuff you have to worry about. Um, a lot of people get bogged down with the weird minutia of 3D modeling because there's a lot of steps to it besides just like either, because let's just start with the bare bones basics, right? Are you going to sculpt your 3D model, or are you going to use like vectors and stuff? And here's the thing, here's the real kick in the head for everyone starting out. It tends to be you need to learn how to do both eventually. I haven't learned how to sculpt in Blender. I know I need to eventually because it will help with modeling better, but someone who's truly good at Blender is able to do both. But what I always recommend people is you stick with one path and you get pretty good at it. And it tends to be like, let's say you're someone who's really into like classic video games. You love Crash Bandicoot and stuff like that, and you love doing art, but you also want to learn how to do like 3D modeling because it's a pretty good art form and it's really easy to do, and it's kind of like digital art, right? And so I always recommend people do low poly art. Try to find something that's not even Blender to do modeling. And my biggest recommendation always is there's this little software called PicoCAD, and it's built off of the backbone of Pico 8. If anyone knows what Pico 8 is, it's basically, in summation, a fantasy console invented by this one guy that uses Lua, which is a C plus spinoff programming language, and it's trying to emulate the same feeling you get when you play like a SNES or an NES, where it has like kind of that 8-bit feel, but you know it's just good and it's easy to program in it, and it's nice. And the same thing with PicoCAD, which is built off of the backbone of that software. It allows you to do very good looking low poly and stylized models that basically rival, I would argue, the NES days where you have like cool 3D models like Star Fox, for example. And you can go a little bit more high fidelity with it because like you're not relying on like programming a game, right? You're just making a single 3D file, and you can do a lot with that. And there's a really good community of people doing that too, and you learn a lot. Like you learn a lot about like, you kind of learn a bit about typology in like a low poly setting, as well as just learning how textures affect things and how faces need to be put in a specific way, as well as how to take advantage of inverting faces to do a whole myriad of other things. It's a very good community. You can check it out on Discord. They have their own Discord. Just look up PicoCAD and you'll be pleasantly surprised. But stuff like that is it's hard to come by, people wanting to like start from scratch at the beginning, because when we look at it on a grander scale, Tom, right? People weren't like 3D modeling like the coolest shit back in the day for video games. It started with like the SNES and the N64 and everything else. And those people who started to learn how to 3D model had limitations that were hardware based. So they couldn't like spend more time modeling something because you get nothing out of it. And the people who did do more high detail modeling, it tended to be those were pre-rendered backgrounds like you see in like Resident Evil and stuff like that.
Look at like early 3D movies. Why do you think Toy Story is about toys? It's because it doesn't matter that, like, the fidelity and the shading is hard to do in 3D modeling programs, because they'll still look fine because they are supposed to look plasticky and weird. They're toys. That's why they chose to make it about toys.
And that's a clear-cut instance of limitations of the hardware outweighing your fidelity and like the vision, right? So you have to be like, well, what if we just made it about toys? Because toys are kind of plasticky, and it doesn't matter if you look at Woody, because he's kind of like this rag doll, and then we can have a cool comparison to Buzz, who's like this more plasticky action figure, and it's a really good contrast that allows the viewer to have this like suspension of disbelief and allow them to be like, I could imagine these toys actually getting up and walking. And then you have that whole thing of kids being like, yeah, after I watched Toy Story, I kind of thought my toys were maybe alive, because like that movie does a really good job, not only in the animation department, but in the storytelling and like the voice acting, to really make you feel like, toys are coming to life. And it's just great. And the only times when that movie doesn't shine is when you see the
people,
the people, because they're just uncanny, because there's just no way to do a really good looking person in 3D. And I would argue there still isn't. Yeah, especially at that time.
But the thing is, like, you couldn't even do a good cartoony human at that time. There's people in that movie, they're not meant to be hyper realistic or nothing. They're cartoon people. But because of the limitations, like, you still couldn't get quite there. You needed to do facsimiles of people that are meant to look plasticky and weird anyway, like Woody.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people might be wondering, like, how does this kind of relate to me? That doesn't matter. I have a really good graphics card. I can make the most realistic babe possible, and it's like, that's not the point we're kind of getting at. Is the major point is, yeah, you probably could render something like that, but could you make something like that from scratch is the real question, right? Maybe if you spent like a shit ton of time doing that, but what you should really be doing is learning the basics and start modeling something like, just like a cool like robot action figure or something, like, and then you just build off of that. It's like programming, right? No one who's programmed in their life just knows like off the bat like how every value affects everything else, and just knows like everything works seamlessly because of this, that, and the next thing. What really matters about programming, and programming your own video game especially, is you going out of your way to be like, I just want to make like a bouncing ball game. So the things that I really actually need to look up are like, how do I do collision, and how do I do like a cool bouncing effect, and like have like weird gravity. Like, those are the three things that you need for a cool bouncing ball video game that you want to make. And the fact that you're going out of your way to limit yourself and being like, I'm not going to have enemies. It's just, it'll be cool platforming. That's fine enough. Or like, I'm not going to have weird like rogue-like layouts, because that would take so much time programming, and I don't even know how to do that. And you're just relying on doing the basics. That helps a lot with not only bringing the scope down and making it more feasible for like a single person who's starting out learning to do something, actually make the thing and finish it, but then it allows you to kind of reworkshop and maybe build a little bit more off of that in the future, or start a new project. And now that you know how to do this thing in Blender really well, you can reuse that knowledge you gained in another project to make the thing go faster. And then you end up much like Tom or me, where you get so good at doing the creation side of things that you then can transition to doing those more larger scale projects that allow more polish, that allow for more detail, and then you can transition to, yeah, I'm gonna make a really cool like realistic like VR character from scratch, and it's gonna be really nice, and people are gonna download it, buy it, or whatever, and I'm gonna make millions, and that's like the end goal, right? But I don't know what your opinion on this is, Tom, as far as like limiting your creative output, even though the hardware is there, so you don't need to limit your creative output, right?
I mean, yeah, it's just basic ideas of like making sure that you're doing something that is within your means. Mm-hmm. Like I think that hardware is a decent example, because it's like it's a good way to think of it is, I think a lot of artists have done this. You get excited one day, you go, I'm gonna start painting. you go out to Michael's, you buy a canvas, you buy a watercolor sketchbook, and then you buy 3 packs of paint. You spend like $200. You come home, you sit down, and you paint once, and then they sit in a closet forever. And it's
and rot.
It's kind of the same thing with like, it's like, oh yeah, I have a fucking 3090 in my PC. Who cares? It's not going to make me a good 3D modeler. It doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. What would make me a good 3D modeler, which I'm not. It's not something I've learned. I kind of want to, though. What would make me a good 3D modeler is 3D modeling. It doesn't matter if it's a good fucking CPU or whatever in my PC. Mm-hmm. It matters if I can fucking do the skill. Yeah. And I think that, like, for me, a good way to... Like, okay, I guess I should run down, like, what about... Because I just, like, kind of talked about, like, haha, I'm using this 1 pixel brush in CSP and it's really nice. Something that helps with a lot is, we talked about line confidence, and what was that, the first episode?
That would have been the third episode.
Third episode, we talked about line confidence. Doodling with extremely simple brushes with no smoothing like that helps a lot with, like, line confidence and teaching you how to, like, build out shapes, because you're not thinking about all the externalities of, color and shading and pressure sensitivity,
line thickness.
In fact, you are doing line thickness, but by accident. You're naturally going over certain spots multiple times because that spot warrants more definition and therefore higher thickness. It's not something that you're doing, like, actively or thinking about. It's a natural thing that will arise out of using simple tools. And then once you graduate up to more complicated tools, you'll carry those abilities with you and become better from it. It's the same reason why I tell people you shouldn't be like, I'm only a digital artist or I'm only a traditional artist. You should do both because they will strengthen each other. Like, there are skills that you will learn by doing digital that you won't learn by doing traditional, but that will help you in traditional, and vice versa.
Yeah, and I think a lot of things that we're talking about now that still can coincide with this is because you don't think about it as like a conceptual idea, but let's really break it down where digital and traditional art are the same. But what's happening is you're changing your limitations, right? So in traditional art, you're not able to fucking hit the back button. Like, the mistakes you make are on there permanently, whether you erase them or not. But then with digital, it is a clean slate every time you hit the undo button. The thing you made is no longer there, and you can keep working on this weird kind of perfectionist mentality if you so choose, right? And there's all other limitations besides just the undo button, but the one that stands out clearly is that one, because I think a lot of people take advantage of that with digital art. But you can clearly see, like, these two mediums, even though they're vastly different, are integrally the same, but they just have different limitations, right? You can do that. You can do this, like, kind of apples to oranges comparisons with, like, a lot of things, like how we could even do it with 3D modeling, right? 3D modeling is kind of like sculpting, but in reverse, because it's more of an additive process than a subtractive process. I would argue that sometimes 3D modeling is more like using clay and stuff rather than, like, chiseling out something from marble. And clearly there's a through line there, because in Blender, as well as other 3D modeling softwares, when the tools is literally called sculpting, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to realize the connection there, because it truly is, you're building more on top of a 3D model rather than, like, doing a reductive, like, chiseling away at something. And I think for a lot of people who do...
I know that you said you don't do sculpting, and, like, I don't know if you've tried it at all, but the tools that they've designed are meant to feel like sculpting. Mm-hmm. That's the whole point, that they feel like, and that they do. They, like, as someone who is only sculpted and doesn't like, look like fucking, what's it called, hard surface modeling.
Yeah.
Like, not as in I think it's bad, just that, like, it doesn't vibe with how my brain works. Mm-hmm. It feels like drawing, really, which is the weird part.
Yeah.
I was able to make nice faces and stuff just because I'm good at doodling.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, and I think a lot of people need to understand, like, you're not going to be integrally good at one or the other. I think a lot of people tend to lean towards one or the other, and the really good artists tend to force themselves to be good at both. Much like with any medium, as well as just learning new art, right? So, um, sculpting's really handy when it comes to 3D modeling. When you're even doing like hard surface stuff, because it allows for a more natural curve, and you can flip flop between the two while you're working on a 3D model. It's not like you just have to use one or the other, and it's really handy when you understand, like, oh, I can do more natural stuff on this specific part of the model because it's not going to get affected by this animation I'm doing on the face. And there's more kind of grandiose stuff beyond just that. But you can imagine, right, like sculpting hair that you're not going to necessarily have like physics to, it's going to be more stiff. It'd make more sense to sculpt that. But then with the face, you kind of want a more rigid body so that you can allow for more seamless animation and without having this weird kind of clipping effect when you're talking or having the character blink or anything else under the sun. And um, not to like get too into the weeds of 3D modeling, I think we should have like a real ass like 3D artist like who's
Mm-hmm.
constantly making it really get into it. You can clearly see by our podcast right now. I I am I have 2 years of Blender under my belt, and in those 2 years, I've still stuck with like low poly modeling, because I just like it, and it reminds me of kind of CAD modeling because that's kind of my background. In my college years was doing computer integrated manufacturing, which is requires a lot of CAD modeling, which for those who don't know is 3D modeling stuff for kind of the industry side of things, like designing and like making metal parts. A lot of people like to use Autodesk Fusion 360. It's a solid bet. And if you're trying to get into 3D modeling for specifically something like 3D printing, Blender's really good if you're an artist and you just want cool art stuff that you can 3D print. But if you're more of a tactile, like this needs to serve a purpose type of object, then you can still kind of do it in Blender. But I highly recommend you get Autodesk Fusion 360 and you just download the free version. The major limitation is you can't like transfer it into any other files besides an STL, which that's all you really need for like basic 3D printing, because you're just going to end up putting it into a slicer anyways. Um, if anyone's interested in stuff like that, we could do a whole topic on that later. I'd like to like get back into the weeds of 3D modeling as well as 3D printing, but I've kind of taken a bit of a break from that to focus on the podcast. But needless to say, getting into other creative endeavors to help with not being able to come up with ideas um, is pretty handy. And don't allow yourself to get bogged down by all the options and choices. And
Mm-hmm.
that's a whole other thing we could talk about, because this kind of coincide with it, Tom, where it's what if you don't have the hardware, or what if you don't have the thing to allow you to create? Like, what then? And I think a lot of people get
Buy a
bogged
sketchbook.
down. Yeah, that's what I was going to kind of get into. A lot of people get bogged down with like, oh, do I need a drawing tablet? Do I need this, that? No, if you've never like really taken like the time to just draw stuff, like, but you've done doodles and stuff on paper, but you really want to have like everything like, connected and have like a place, get a sketchbook, get a good sketchbook. We've talked about the sketchbooks we buy at Tom. What is our brand for the sketchbooks? what
Canson.
what
Get a Canson mixed media. They're the
mm-hmm.
blue one. You go on Amazon. They're the dark blue ones. I think there's light blue
Yeah.
ones. They're slightly different. I go for the dark blue ones.
Mm-hmm. And make sure you look for like it's good for acrylic and stuff. It'll have that underneath the label, and they'll be a little bit more
Buy it from
pricey.
the buy it from the description. We have affiliate links.
We don't have affiliate links. We'll never have
We
affiliate links.
we
We
could
could.
make them. I was gonna say, why don't we just fucking make them?
All right, we'll make it for this episode. I'll
Yeah.
have to write that down. But yeah, so I guess in summation, if you think you need like some high end tier hardware so that you can be creative, That's never the solution. I'll tell you this much. It's zero. The only reason you would ever need more things, right, is if you're doing more things. So after you've gone through that sketchbook, you buy another one, right? Or you buy a bigger one. Or hell, you're like, I want to get into digital art. I guess I'll just start doodling on my phone, right? I highly recommend people to doodle on their phone. And like we've said before, in one of the episodes, I believe, or I was just talking to Milkshake about this because they're also fascinated by digital art and like trying to get into that scene. Is I highly recommend Pixiv Sketch as an app. It's for those who know what Pixiv is. It is a Japanese like posting site for art, but there's like three different kind of like apps for it. I really like Pixiv Sketch because it is like simple. It is very easy to understand. You hit the plus button, you make a canvas that's basically the size of your phone. You can make one bigger if you really wanted to, and then you're just off to the races. You can sketch as much as you want, and then the moment you're done with your art, it'll ask you, "Hey, do you want to post this?" And you can say yes, and then you don't even have to worry about like formatting it or moving it over to your computer to then post it somewhere else. It's just there and it's posted, and you're like, yeah, that was easy. It was just like three buttons and I'm done making art. Um, and I highly recommend that to people. Is you got to start off easy, create less barriers to entry for yourself, and just have fun with the stuff you're doing. And if at the end of the day you do it so much that you're somehow making commissions drawing on your phone, then I think you're in a good spot to be like, you know what? I am going to invest in this Surface Pro 7 or this fucking whatever tablet and get better drawing software so that I can like get rid of more of those like weird barriers to entry. And not only that, but broaden your horizons by allowing you to do more creative stuff because you have more tools to your disposal, because you don't need those limitations anymore. You don't need the training wheels of drawing on a sketchbook or drawing on your phone, because you've already exhausted those options. You've already learned the basics. You have a solid foundation to work off. Now it's all up to you to decide where you want to invest your time and resources into, whether you want to optimize stuff or not, or if you want to keep on doing what you've been doing and just animate it in a 3ds because you have a 3ds lying around and it has Flipnote on it, so just do it, right? I don't know if you have anything to add on the whole if I buy something I'll be better mentality, Tom.
It never works. You need to. I mean, like there, it can create having. So there's two sides to it. Having the realization of, you know, a carpenter is not defined by the quality of his tools. Can also have the double-edged sword effect of now you are anxious to buy a new thing because you're like, well, should I buy a tablet? I can buy a tablet, but it won't make me better. Or I think that it's good to get new tools. It's just that, like, I don't know. It's hard to say. Like, it won't make you better. I guess that's the thing. You should be getting it just to try it, just to see, like, I think that this will be a better tool for me, as opposed to, I think that this will allow me to be better.
And I'll say this much, Tom, on the carpentry side of things, because I think this happens a lot in just every medium where people think that there's like you need like 20 tools to do like leather work, or you need like a table saw, a miter saw, a fucking coping saw just to unravel your emotions on how to do carpentry. But like, no, truth be told, if you know a person who's into carpentry, they'll tell you this verbatim: the one golden tool that allows you to do so much with so little is a router. And I specifically recommend a hand router because you get that kind of more hand feel to it. You can get a table router if you like, but with a hand router specifically, and there's also more tools that kind of go with routers, and you'll see this a lot with like Japanese YouTubers who are like wood carpenters. Routers are the bomb because let's really like break down what a router is. A router is a spinning motor that has a bit at the end of it that just cuts material. And you're probably thinking to yourself, well, how the hell do I make a chair with just a spinning? It's basically a motor in my hand that has a metal bit that can chew my finger off, right? But because of the mobility and the far-reaching amount of tools you can put into it, there is so much you can do with it on top of You can plane with it, which means you can make your materials flat and even. You can router edges as its namesake, which means you can make edges nice and soft without having to sand them down manually or having to like do a specific cut. You can cut through materials with routers. So you can make precision. Let's say you're making a cool ass bookshelf and you need the slots for the actual shelving unit. You need to have like even slots. So all you need to do is make a small jig that keeps your materials together tight, and when you router across them to cut material away with your router, it allows for you to not only create super even cuts for a nice clean bookshelf that has a straight edge and like everything is perfectly laid out. It saves you so much time compared to like getting a table saw and doing the same kind of setup and concept of laying the material down and just cutting it with a saw repeatedly. You will find 9 out of the 10 times you talk to a carpenter, the first tool out of their fucking bag is a router because it is so versatile and easy to use. And that's the same thing with art. The most versatile and easy thing to use is a pencil and paper. You can make so much with so little, right? It's the biggest bang for your buck since fucking sliced bread. And that's the same across the board with any like medium. Spray paint is another good example because I used to do spray paint art. I might get back into it, but the biggest thing you need to realize with spray paint art is the runniness of the material. And Walmart sells the cheapest fucking spray paint known to man, and it's very runny, which means it's very watery and it'll tend to drip. But that's more than fine if you're starting out learning how to do spray paint art, because chances are high you're not going to know how to do all the weird intricacies of like sharp lines, as well as like the distance you need to be away from spray painting. I'll also say this, another thing you should invest in if you are doing spray painting stuff is masks and respirators, because you do not want to get fucking black lung spray painting. You don't want to get that fucking spray painter's lung. But needless to say, the biggest thing is cheap paints so you can learn, as well as cheap nozzles that you can clean out or reuse that allow for more interesting things. Because with spray paint, yeah, you can get different nozzles for the spray heads that allow for different kind of cones of shapes of what you're spraying, much like in digital art, where if you go to the spray paint tab, those tabs exist in the real world, where spray painters have different things to allow for different shapes that they need to spray out so that they can have more control over the paint that they're using. You'll see this type of thing in all mediums, where you'll think there's an insane barrier to entry, but in truth there isn't. You just haven't found the cheapest option yet. And this is the best thing I've ever learned is from Adam Savage, one of the Mythbusters, is what he does with tools is this, and it's very simple. Anytime one of his tools breaks, he either buys the same tool or the same price for the tool, or he goes and upgrades and gets something slightly more expensive. And that is anything in the art field. That is anything that you do, that you invest time into. So let's say you're a person that draws on their phone all the time, and your phone just fucking craps the bed because it's 5 years old, the screen's already cracked, but you're still able to draw on it. And it's like, well, shit, now it's finally dead. It hit the bucket. So what you got to do mentally as an artist is be like, do I buy the same phone, or do I buy something better? Or the third option, do I buy a drawing tablet instead of a phone, and I just have a cheap ass phone, right? And you kind of split the cost between those, right? So it's always a choice for you what you are investing your time and money into. But the real question you should have is, are you going to invest so much time in the thing you purchased that like hours to pennies equivalent is like you've spent so much time using this tool that you've made your money back like hand over fist because you made like 3 commissions with this, and now you've paid for your tablet already? So those are the questions you should really be asking yourself when it comes to investing in your art, or just investing in tools in general for creation.
Yes.
Do you have anything you want to add to
I
that,
agree.
Prom? I agree wholeheartedly.
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 It's weird. I have a hard time adding because I'm like, yeah, I disagree. It's like, it's also, it's just hard to choose, like, when to, I guess it's the same thing I was saying before, where it's like, say you've never done any digital art, and you just draw with pencil and paper. And if you're like me, you've tried drawing on your phone and you hate it. You're like, I can't draw with my fucking finger. I can't do that. How do you choose when to upgrade? Because, like, I'm very much the type of person where I will impulse buy shit. My first ever tablet, I got it because I was like, I would love to have a tablet, and then I just got a tablet, and then I used it for like 6 weeks, was terrible at it, and then suddenly became good at it by just using it a lot.
This is your first mistake, Tom. You ignored everything I said. Well, you didn't ignore everything I said. You just didn't know that there were options.
I wasn't like, I will become better at art by having a tablet. I was just like,
yeah,
I want an Intuos. And then I got it. It was like a $100 or $200 like screenless tablet. It was that kind of tablet.
Yeah, but so something that would have helped with that, Tom, before you even bought a tablet to begin with, was you looking for the cheapest option possible. Because I don't think a lot of people have this mindset. Because I think it's a generalization because it's true. It's like the middle class is the middle class because they're the majority, right? So the majority of people who are kind of starving artists, maybe they have a part-time job, and yeah, they can splurge on stuff that they really care about. But when I hear you say this, Tom, where it's like, I didn't like drawing with my finger, in my mind, it's not, oh, I got to buy a tablet now. In my mind, it's, well, what else could I draw with on my phone, right? So you can look for the cheaper options always, where it's like, well, what if I got one of those weird, like, rubber kind of like tablet pens, right, that people use? Because it's like pressure sensitive, and also my phone uses like electrons or whatever the fuck.
Yeah, but they're not. Those aren't pressure sensitive.
They aren't. Yes, they aren't pressure sensitive. But what I'm getting at is this, Tom, where let's say, because you don't need pressure. I know plenty of artists that don't use pressure sensitivity and they just manually change it, because that's just what they're used to. Because they're the same artists that have relied on using their phone that doesn't have pressure sensitivity, right? So for them, the cheapest option was buying one of those kind of rubber-tipped tablet-style pens, because it feels more like you're drawing rather than just using your finger. And some of them just use their fucking finger, and it works for them. But yeah, I see where you're coming from specifically, Tom, when you move, because there's a difference, right? The difference is this. It's an artist starting to be an artist, and they decided to start with digital art first on their phone, rather than it's you, an artist, who's used physical media that has sensitivity, because that's just the nature of putting pressure.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. It's the fact that, like, an Intuos, nice, like a cheap Intuos tablet, I think it was probably, I think it was literally $100 at the time, so not like a huge investment. And I was like, I want to say it was maybe 15, so it wasn't even a big investment. Like, from, it wasn't even me that bought it. It was like my parents, like, as a birthday gift. But even then, it was like, the reason that was the cheapest option for me was because that's what's most analogous to pencil and paper. I don't think that one of those like rubber tip like pens would have been analogous, especially
you would have hated it.
Yeah.
And that's fair. That's totally fair. And here's the thing, though. Not a lot of people know this, but Tom's an avid drawer, like, so that makes sense for him. Like, he's clearly put in the time and effort in just the bare bones basics of art, that it makes sense for him to invest in something grander.
You know what? Here's something else that I should also mention is, if you get new tools and you try them and you use them for a day and then you put them in a closet and never use them again, I would say maybe that's because those tools just didn't vibe with you and they're not an essential part of your workflow yet. But also maybe it's just because you need to get used to them. So like with that Intuos I got, my first digital tablet, I got it, I used it like once or twice, and I was like, I don't know if I like this that much, because it was weird to me. But eventually, like literally like probably 6 weeks later, I was like, I'm gonna dig that tablet back up, put it in my laptop, and just try to use it again. And I like used it for a few days. I think I used it for maybe like a week or two. And once I was finally used to how it felt, because it is distinctly different from drawing on paper. For example, because it was screenless, I was moving my hand around on this little tablet and watching things change on the screen. Just,
Mm-hmm.
And then I got used to it, and then I got good at it, and now I can draw digitally just as well as I can traditionally. And had I just, followed my initial intuition of, this doesn't really work for me, this isn't the kind of art I do, I wouldn't have, I would have eventually learned. I feel like I'm the kind of person where I would eventually have done digital, but it would have taken me longer, because I would have held off on learning it.
Yeah. And there's a big difference between growing pains and just not doing it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So, and like you said, the difference would be if you just gave up and you just didn't, you were just like, man, I'm not good at this anymore, fuck it. And I think there's this really good, I forget the guitarist who said this, but basically what they did and how they became an amazing guitarist to begin with wasn't because when they were learning something new that was harder and out of their scope, every time they failed, instead of just throwing the guitar away and being like, I'll do this tomorrow, they picked the guitar back up and they played a song that they really liked, that they were good at, and they continued playing, rather than just saying, fuck it, I'm not going to improve today, or I'm not even going to practice today. And that kind of mindset is extraordinarily helpful, especially with something like art or just any creative stuff, because if you have that mindset of, I'm not good at this, I might as well just give up and just do nothing and sleep the rest of the day away, you'll just never improve. And you'll always have that weird mindset of, if I'm not at least halfway decent at this from the get-go, then it just must not be my thing. If you got to give it a good honest try, you got to give it a good fucking 2 weeks, maybe even a month. And if it's like, this thing is making me fucking miserable, then you know what? Maybe it is, and you need to transition to something new. But if you start getting better at it, and you generally do put in the effort and the time to learn it, then you'll see the improvements right away, and you'll get into a groove, and you'll just start loving doing it. And Milkshake, speaking of loving, we're not ignoring you. Milkshake has a lot of cool stuff to say, especially about how we don't pay attention to our audience, our live audience members on the Discord. We don't really promote it much, but we will soon. If you ever come to Horny Artists Tom's 18 plus Discord server, where we talk live to 2 audience members, sometimes maybe 3, you can talk to us in the chat. It's a Twitch stream or something. We've had a couple
episodes that had 6 or 7 people in the fucking chat.
Yeah, for sure. Mm-hmm. But yeah, Milkshake is totally on board with what we've been saying, where it's like software too. On top of that, no one really thinks about the software side of things besides just the hardware things. But I think we talked about this earlier, about how you can buy a Clip Studio Paint CSP for $30, and it's the Pro version, because they have cool naming conventions. And what the Pro version allows you to do is basically change out the layout of CSP to how you like it, as well as just do a lot of just cool digital art. And there's really no other limitations beyond when you buy Clip Studio EX, which is the best version. That one gives you features like being able to animate more than 12 frames, being able to export stuff a little better. And you kind of see this a lot with software, like I've mentioned before with Auto Fusion 360, where they limit features so that you then, after you get really good at using the free version, they really want you to buy their very costly version. And they've kind of already got you by the grips and by the balls, because you're like, I'm so used to this, I might as well just buy it. Luckily, Blender doesn't do that. So,
I was going to say something I want to say about Clip Studio Paint. First of all, if you want to do animation, just get the more expensive version. Just out the gate. And second, if you want to try Clip Studio Paint, get the subscription. Because the subscription is just ridiculously... I remember when they were adding that, people were like, oh, they're like Adobe now. It's no. Adobe is $50 a month for fucking Photoshop. Clip Studio Paint, I think, is $6 a month for the full version of the program. So if you want to try out Clip Studio Paint, just pay the fucking $6 a month for like 2 or 3 months, and see if you like it, and then you can do like the one-time purchase version.
Mm-hmm.
Which is,
and I'll say this much,
like,
Tom.
For the full version, $200. If you're not interested in animation at all, then just get the pro version. Because that's the main difference. And there are other differences, there's shit that they add, but that's the main thing.
And I think to go into this more, because I used to animate with the shitty version of CSP. Yeah, could you imagine that? So when I did it for a year, it was a ball ache, because what you have to do, just for the viewer's frame of reference, what you then have to do is export every like 12 frame animation you do, or however you split it up, and then you have to export all those images into a file.
Oh yeah,
and then you have to export those files. And,
we should just very quickly. We didn't explain basically the way in Pro you can only animate up to 24 frames, and then it'll stop you.
Mm-hmm.
The EX version, you can animate as many frames as you want.
Yes. Yeah, I think we've kind of discussed that earlier in this episode, or at least some episodes. But in summation, so what that means for you as the one using like the baby's first CSP, right, is you then have to export each 24 frames, or however you split them up, into then a file folder, and then that file folder has to be organized so that every image is in sequence, right? And you got to make sure you do that correctly. And then once you have all that together, you then have to use that file that has all of your images sequenced together properly and shove it into I'd imagine a free software, because if you're doing this, you're doing the cheap end side of things, and you're investing time into learning how to do it the old-fashioned way, which I can respect, but also you're wasting a shit ton of time doing this process. So then you open up some type of video editing software that allows for you to drop image files that will then be played into sequence, and then you have to set what the FPS is, as well as like if there's like weird time, and that's not even taking into account the fact that, let's say for instance, you didn't do this because you thought you could just do it in the video editor where you can like move the frames around. Not as easy as you'd think. So you'd probably have to end up putting in manual in-betweens instead of what you could do in CSP, which is separate them out in the timeline rather than just filling it up with a filler image or stuff like that, because it'll do it for you, right? So in summation, it's a pain in the ass to sequence all of your images into a separate software. But when you unlock the golden pass, as it were, for EX, and you have the ability to use it, not only is syncing up audio easy because you're able to just dump audio files into CSP and then animate on top of them, you're just good because you can go as long as you want and you're fine. The only limitation I'll say is you can't really like level your audio correctly, which is why I always recommend people to use Audacity, which is a free audio software that is literally used by everyone in the industry because it just works, and it just works. And if you know how to use it properly, you can make really good audio like mine and Tom's now, finally, after episode 5.
Yep.
Oh, we're not going to focus on that. Audio? Brio?
Did that sound good?
Yeah, you sound good, Tom. Why wouldn't you sound good? Did you change your audio to a webcam like I did?
Yup.
Yup, it's the best way to record. I love recording through my webcam.
Well, I had this nice, I think it's like an Audio Technica mic, and I had the Focusrite thing. I was like, this is too much like complexity. I have to plug two things into each other for this. And then I have to plug...
You don't have to.
And then I have to plug that into my computer. So I decided to upgrade to something that's a little simpler. I got a Blue Yeti Meteor microphone. And, just, it's nice, it's small, plugs right into your computer.
Yeah, that's
one wire.
I think every good podcast has been recorded with a Blue Yeti microphone.
Yeah.
Look at Sleepycast. But on top of that, Tom, I think you're wrong. We can talk about that stuff because this coincides with everything else we've been talking about.
You were saying you wanted to upgrade to one of those McDonald's microphones.
Oh yeah, here, let me grab it.
It's not tinny enough. You need to talk into like an actual tin can.
Hold on. Yeah, hold on. Hello.
There you go.
Yeah, this is our audio now, listener. I hope this wakes you up when you have ASMR dreams of us. But what were you ordering, Tom? Okay, with that, we're done with that. Fuck that. Um, no, what I was gonna say though is this happens with film and audio development gamers is it tends to be the reason you buy better audio equipment or better camera equipment is so that you don't have to do a bunch of editing in the back end, right? So now that Tom's audio is crispy clean, no caffeine, we can't use that. We're going to get sued if we use that. Tom, we got to cut that. But the reason having good audio from both of us is really nice is because all I then have to do is add like 2 things to our audio and then I'm done. Like I don't have to go out of my way to be like, oh, Tom's audio clipped and it looks like a fucking candy bar. I guess I have to use all these cool effects in Audacity to like make it sound at least tangible so your ears aren't bleeding. So yeah, it goes a long way when you buy equipment, but it goes a very short way if you're like Tom and you buy the equipment and you don't set it up properly, and then it's still shit no matter what you do. So keep that in mind. Having good equipment. I
installed the drivers when I first got it. I think.
Well, you didn't. Well, it's neither here nor there, Tom. The fact is, you didn't, and we paid dearly for it. So, fuck you. How about that? Yeah, no rebuttal.
No, my rebuttal was what I already said. I'm pretty sure I did install drivers when I got it. Maybe I got the wrong ones. Maybe I just installed them wrong. Maybe they fucking deleted themselves because drivers do that sometimes.
You told me that you picked up the drivers when you were driving, and I was like, that doesn't make any sense. And you're like, well, it's like a mini game. Yeah, you picked them up at Wawa, a place that doesn't exist.
This is a side fucking conversation. This is really funny. I was at Wawa and I was looking at I have the Wawa app, so I get the rewards if I buy certain amounts of whatever.
If you buy 20 hoagies at once, yeah.
By 20 hoagies, you get 1 small iced tea.
You get 1 milkshake.
I get 1 milkshake. But essentially, I looked at it and I was like, oh, there's rewards for gas now. It's like, oh, if you use this reward, it'll cut 15 cents per gallon off. So you can get a lot of money's worth if if you're getting a lot of gas. But then I looked at it and it had a little disclaimer under it, and it says, not eligible for use in New Jersey. It's like,
get fucked.
Dude, 90% of Wawas are in New Jersey. The rest are
they would make no money.
A few in Philadelphia, a few in New York, and a few 1 in Florida. They're all
one in Missouri,
New
Tom.
Jersey. You have Wawa?
There's 1 Wawa in Missouri. You can take a pilgrimage to it if you
want. How far is it if you were to drive?
It's somewhere in the Hillsborough area. Now that I'm doxing myself even more, but I don't even live near there, so it's go around Hillsborough if you know where that is in Missouri, and go get a Wawa sandwich. It's somewhere around there. I couldn't fucking recall.
I wonder if the Wawas down there are as good as the ones up here, if the consistency is maintained. Because, any Wawa you go to... I would
say so.
Because, any Wawa you go to around here, it's the fucking same Wawa no matter what. You're gonna get the same hoagie. Unless, a really shitty one. But I just, I wonder if since there's only one down there, I wonder if they got good, management... keep everything consistent.
Yeah, because I would imagine if there is only one out there, it is a franchisee guy that's I love Wawas, I want one in Missouri, and then he started his own Wawa.
That's true.
It tends to be people like that are on the up and up, unless you're Subway, because of the weird, shitty business practices they do. But we don't need to get into that.
Actually, you know what? Now that I think about it, I don't think Wawa is even a franchise. I think it's all corporate.
Really?
So yeah, I think so. So that means that if they open a Wawa,
it could be a test
there,
one.
Yeah.
A test to see what the fuck boony rednecks, southern, western, weird fucking amalgamation water people would hoagies or not.
I know that this is West Virginia. This is nowhere near where you live, but I just immediately thought of those the crazy inbred freaks in West Virginia. That, like, like one of them is fucking half melted, like a stick man, and he only can bark to speak. He can't actually talk. You ever see you ever see that family?
Yeah.
He goes, ha!
The incest family?
Yeah.
He barks like a dog.
The Addams family. That's fucking
That's what the Addams family would do.
That's the fucking Isabel family.
Their morals are skewed.
Yeah. That's the Isabel family in, like, 3 generations.
It's more like in fucking 2, Tom, with the way you draw them.
But anyway, like, I just imagine those fucking guys wandering into a Wawa and causing chaos.
Can I get this for 50 cents? No, sir, that's $20. Can I get it for 25 cents?
They're trying to haggle.
That's what water people do. You don't know about... Well, you do know.
Yeah, no,
you know what water
people, yeah.
Yeah.
I love the idea
it's real, guys.
I love the idea of, like, trying to haggle in a store like that, where everything just has set prices and they just scan it. It's like, I can't... It's a corporate store.
No,
I can't give you better prices.
No, Tom, this is how... Because I don't know what the fuck is going on in Middle America. But, like... It's still the fucking same. Like, they don't try to evolve at all. So what happens is this, all right? So let's look at it from, like, a weird corporate angle, right? So you go to craft stores, right, Tom, where they sell, like, tchotchkes as well as, like, art supplies, right? And I think it's Michael's that does this still, or it's either Hobby Lobby or Michael's. But one of them or both of them still do not use barcodes. And you're probably thinking to yourself, how the fuck do you run a business without, like, proper, like, inventory management with the barcodes? And a second thing you come up with is, why the hell aren't they using barcodes? And for those who don't know the history of barcodes and them being introduced in the U.S., there was this weird, cool little cult of people that were, like, the Christians, I'll say, and they thought that
this is
barcodes... Yeah, it was Hobby Lobby. Yeah, that's what I assume. And there's, like, a shit ton of Hobby Lobbies out here, so that makes sense. But the Christian people thought barcodes were evil because in the devil book, in the cool book they read, they say that one of the signs of the apocalypse is putting, like, the mark of the beast on, like, goods. And so they thought barcodes were that. They thought barcodes were evil. And you can... If you don't believe me, you can even look up SOS. For those who don't know, SOS stands for Save Our Souls. An insanely amazing cult that made a lot of cool music videos that are actually extremely catchy.
The fucking paper roll video. I actually genuinely love that. SOS.
Yeah.
The save from distress. It's so fucking good.
It's a fucking
Everybody's
there's more than just that one.
Computer crazy. Oh, it's so good.
Yeah, not to, like, get into, like, the kind of rabbit hole of that whole cult, because I think it's really important for people to, like, go out and, like, discover it on their own. But in kind of, like, summation, this SOS group was this, like, kind of big cult that, like, had, like, big, like, not e-celebrities, but big, like, celebrities of the time. I just autofill e-celebrities now because everyone's a fucking e-celebrity, but celebrities that were normal at the time were, like, big into that cult because they were also Christians. And also on top of that, the cult, like, expanded not only, like, the Americas, but it was started in Japan and was, like, it was kind of, like, everywhere at the time. And it's a part of that whole kind of, like, a myriad of, like, oh, Pokemon's the devil, or this is the devil, or
Satanic Panic.
Yeah, that. And it's a very fascinating part of history, and it still affects us to this day. And it affects Missouri a lot because those same people still live here, and they still think that they can just go to fucking Hobby Lobby and haggle prices because it's just on a tag, so it's not, like, actual things. And on top of all this, right, is there's a lot of, like, thrift shops in Missouri, or, like, pawn shops / like, antiquity shops, because it's just old America. Like, Missouri is just old America. It's old Americana. Even if you go into fucking St. Louis, it's still very much, like, rooted in that old kind of blues era. And so there's just, like, a lot of, like, haggling to be had in Missouri, right? And on top of that, not only that, it's a farm community in most. Missouri, to me at the very least, is very much farm centric. Um, and that breeds a whole other thing of like haggling, where it's like I literally have family members who are like, "Hey, you want to go in at buying a live cow?" I'm like, "Buying a live cow?" I was like, "Well, for what purpose?" And it's like, "Oh, I'm like, I got a friend who's like gonna butcher it," and I'm like, "Okay, I could also just like go to Walmart and like get beef that's been, you know, seen and it doesn't have bad cow disease, so I'm kind of good. I'm all right, you know." You do you, right? But yeah, so I think that's where that's where the haggling part of the water people come from. Just so that we can get back on topic, we're talking about water people from Missouri, and they're real. You can look up game show. There's a game show clip of like a person literally going like, "Yeah, this is for all my water people out there." Um, so it's a term used in Missouri, and it's very much real. And the kind of weird lore behind it is this: the people that drink the well water or wherever the fucking water that's like tapped into by the government is supposed to make these people stupider, and then like have like rotted hair and like falling teeth out, as well as just like wanting to find deals on everything. But I think in summation, the real thing is Missouri has a real bad crack problem that no one talks about. Like it used to be number one. We used to be the number one in illegal narcotics sold. Fun fact, we're now third place. So, boo, I guess. But yeah, Missouri was like a hotbed for like all these like drugs for like a long time. And so I think that's where water people come from. I think it's just a lot of cracked out people.
Of course. Cracked out people and like just inbred people from being out in the fucking boonies.
Mm-hmm. And now Oregon's got the most druggies, so I'm good. Yeah. I don't have to worry about it as much. I have to worry about coyotes more, eating my crops.
You have to worry about water people fucking sneaking onto your crops.
Yeah, water people with their like gnarled teeth eating my corn on the cob, but like they can only get like half of the corn on the cob because they don't realize that they have to move their mouth.
I just imagine it looking like the rake.
Yeah.
You're just like crawling.
He gets
around.
Scared off by the scarecrow because he thinks it's a real person. That's why we have them. Yeah.
Dress him up like a cop.
That reminds me.
Dress him up like a fucking like rehab facility nurse.
Yeah. He's got like a clipboard. No, but like what I was gonna say though, Tom, is this. You screaming reminds me of the fucking. Have you seen that video of like that like cracked out the video's like titled something like the shit my neighbors do, like, and it's just like this cracked out guy, like you see a hand come underneath a fence and he's like digging like the soil, and then the guy pans over the fucking fence and it's just like his like drugged out like fucking neighbor that's going and then he like walks away like casually.
Well, yeah, that's what happens. He looks up, he sees the guy recording and he goes ah! And then he just stops. Yeah. He like stops and just like breathes. So he looks down and breathes.
How do you do that so good? How do you have the voice down? Have you been practicing?
Yeah, I watch that video every day.
It's your vocal exercises for the podcast. It is a funny video.
It sounds like those screaming goats.
Yeah, it really does.
Nah, ah! It's almost like a fake scream. It's like
yeah.
It's like when you realize you're scared, but like 5 seconds after you actually got scared.
Yeah, it's like a kid.
Brain,
It's like a kid getting upset at their parent because they get caught in the act, and they're like, and it's like, oh, okay.
My favorite part about that video is how he does that scream, but then like immediately after his head just kind of rolls down and he starts breathing.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to animate someone like that. You never see that. I think that's why I love Smiling Friends so much, is because they have characters like that are just like real ass people. They're like, this is a homeless man I would see on my street. He wouldn't like do anything crazy, but he would like roll his eyes weird.
Yeah, like I love like that's the thing that's cool about Smiling Friends. Like they'll have characters that have weird shit that they do, but like in a conventional show, that weird thing that character does would be like their gimmick. You know, like maybe they're like always scratching their arm, or like they have a weird eye or something. Whereas in Smiling Friends, it's like no, that's just a thing they do. It's not defining of them.
Yeah, it's like a nervous tick. Yeah.
They just like have a nervous tick, and that's the extent of it. There's nothing else to like read into with it.
I would love it if in like future episodes of Smiling Friends, and now that I'm saying it, it's not going to happen. Where it's like that becomes like a central plot where it's like this guy, they're trying to like fix a guy that has like a weird like nervous tick, and he has to like take pills, and it's like a completely normal thing. But then like he forgets to take his pills, and like hilarity ensues, right? Because it's just that's like normal ass like real shit you have to deal with, like with like real people.
I mean, it could even be something like stupid, like they fucking have like a nervous tick or something like that. I feel like they would even go. You know, honestly, knowing them, like fucking Zach and Michael Cusack, like they would probably fucking do an episode that's just about a guy balding, and he just spends all day on like Reddit trying to figure out how to like get his hair back. And they're just like, and like the episode's joke is them just literally going like, dude, you have to just like unplug and fucking get off the internet, man. Like this isn't good.
Yeah.
I guess that would basically just be the shrimp episode, I guess. But I guess the difference.
No, he gets de-scalped, and that's why it's funny because now he doesn't have to worry about growing hair.
Or like the difference would be like it's not even like about them getting him off the computer. It's more about the second he gets home, he's right back on fucking Reddit.
Yeah. I'm sure they'll have a Reddit episode. That'd be great. An episode entirely dedicated to Reddit and all of its amazing endeavors and honestly the passion involved with making it. And like not only that, Tom. All right, and I'll say this much because you dog on Reddit constantly, even though Doge is on Reddit. All right, and I'll say this much, Tom. All right, listen here, bud. I think Reddit has done more for like just everyone in general than like Margaret Thatcher or like Martin Luther King. Like you always dog on me for this, but like listen, bud. When you have like a collective of people being able to cancel any fucking degenerate they want, I think that's really cool and epic and smart. So yeah, better than Martin Luther King. That's what I think about Reddit.
Because of Reddit, I'm still hodling my fucking GameStop and waiting for Mo-ass motherfucker. It's coming. Yeah.
I'm spending all my upvotes and gold on your posts, so it's kind of like a long-term investment. So, look at that and, weep. All right? My fucking Reddit gold's going to be worth more than your Elon stock any day of the goddamn week.
My Elon stock?
Yeah, your stock in Elon. Because you gave him like $20 and he still owes you like the $20.
Well, I gave him...
When is he going to give that back?
My dad said in college he gave Elon like $10. And if you think of that $10 as an investment in PayPal, it would now be worth about $6 billion. So we've been kind of...
That sounds about right.
We've been in and out of court with him. We're like trying to like get this,
well, you said you got death threats from him on Twitter, which is why you had to leave. You had to skedaddle, as he said. Right?
I was getting death. He was flying drones around my house. He was flying little rockets.
This is all hypothetical, though.
Yeah, hypothetically.
Well, hypothetically, because it wasn't the Elon. It was just some guy.
Hypothetically, he was doing this.
But hypothetically, though, it wasn't like the Elon Twitter. It was just like, but he owns Twitter, so he can make as many accounts as he wants. So
hypothetically, he did kill my dog.
We're not saying that Elon did dox Tom and his family and is holding them for ransom, and that's why we have to do this podcast.
Hypothetically,
for his sins.
He made the front page of Twitter fucking my home address. Hypothetically.
Yeah, this is all hypothetical. This isn't real. This isn't slander. But if Elon did do that, I would think he wasn't that good of a guy. And in fact, I think maybe he should, step down from Elon X or whatever it's called now that he owns. What business does he own?
He renamed it Elontopia.
Elontopia?
He's building he's
building the Elon verse, right?
He's building a theme park. It's like gonna be like Disney World, but it's
also gonna be like but it's also gonna be like the metaverse.
Yeah,
that's how he put it.
It's like a Disney park, but you put on Apple Vision Pro goggles, and then you just stand in place. And it's all digital. It's Decentraland.
It's Elon Vision Pro. You got the branding wrong, and it just allows you to see through the eyes of a man who's created so much and yet gets dogged on for so little.
You put on the headset and it's just a live stream of Elon Musk talking to a camera.
No, it's a live stream of you getting yelled at by Redditors wanting to cancel you for building cool spaceships like Jimmy Neutron.
Well,
I think that's brave.
You go to Elontopia, you put on the headset, and it's there's no theme park. It's just like a bunch of headsets connected to wires, like outside. Yeah. So you put on the headset, and then it's just like ISIS beheading videos. You're just like
no, but like besides that though, you said.
Place.
Well, yeah, you said because when Elon was trying to like make save face with the whole death threat thing, and you got to see Elontopia in real life, you got the preview, you got the fast pass, and you said, yeah, it's basically like Jimmy Neutron graphics, and I didn't understand that at the time because it's because Jimmy Neutron is all pre-rendered, right? So I was like, well, like the video game, and you're like, no. You were like, no. It's like the actual like movie quality. I was like, oh, so that's a little better, but is the purple flurp any better? And you were poured with something like ridiculous. You said it's basically like cum, and I didn't know what you meant by that, and it makes me think differently of you.
Well,
as a person.
See, I know with all the death threats and the doxing and all the problems that Elon Musk's given me, he like burned
and that limp.
He did shoot me in the knee, causing me to have a permanent limp. He poisoned like some berries that I was eating once, which
but okay, well hold on, Tom.
But hold on a second. Hold on a second. Now hold on, boy.
Okay, yeah, you can say it. You can say it. Yeah.
But despite all of that, when I saw the Jimmy Neutron cum bubbles flying out of the purple flirp can, I was like, damn, he got me. That's pretty good.
Yeah, and I think I want to reiterate this. The reason why Elon hypothetically did this, because it's all in court, we can't divulge any of this. But hypothetically, if he did do all of this, Tom, I think it was in retaliation. Death threats from my lawyer. Yeah, Mr. Peabody. No relation.
He heard what we're talking about.
No, okay. Well, so what I was gonna say though, I think Elon is perfectly just in some of those actions, simply because in retaliation you did, in fact, as we talked earlier in the podcast, hypothetically, I believe we talked about how you got really mad at some kind of like low level comedian. I forget his name. He had like a podcast or something or other, and like you shot him with like a bullet in the knee, and you said it had Kryptonian DNA or whatever the fuck, but it was just a bullet with like plutonium in it or something, and you gave him cancer, and then he died. Not soon after, but because he had cancer. But yeah, I think his name was like Lorm Born Norm. I couldn't recall.
Well, that was just heckling. That's not that big.
Well, no, you said he was. You talked about this for hours on the last like 3 podcasts ago, where he made fun of like Irish Americans, which I thought was pretty funny as like someone with Irish DNA. But you got pissed off and like. You shot him, and I don't know why you don't recall this. We talked about it on the podcast, and you're going to feel the fool.
You were saying that you were really mad when he was making fun of Native Americans, though.
But that's fair. And also, they don't like to be called Native Americans. They do like to be called Indians.
That's true. But he called them Redskins.
Well, no, he was just talking about the Redskins because he's a Redskins fan. I think you're crossing wires here. Really, Norm is a Redskins fan. Norm MacDonald.
Because he was talking about...
He fucked a frog.
Because he was talking about, like, he said, like, the Trail of Tears was good or something. I think you were misconstruing.
He didn't say they were good. He just said it had to be done, and I was kind of confused at that wording.
I didn't get that part, but the rest of it was funny.
That joke. Yeah, but... Yeah, not to talk ill of the dead comedian who died of cancer, and it's not funny. All right, stop laughing. It's not funny. All right.
Jedi, why is Norm MacDonald saying all these funny things?
Norm, you got new legs, but he still has cancer and dies. That's the end of that movie. Forrest Gump 2.
What's it called? Lieutenant Dan, but instead of being a guy without legs, he's just a corpse in a wheelchair.
It's Norm MacDonald. Yeah.
No.
Would you watch it if it was Norm MacDonald instead of Lieutenant Dan?
Of course. Are you fucking kidding? That would be the best movie of all time.
Have we talked about this? Oh my god. Okay. I think I've mentioned this before, but not on the podcast. But like, Norm is in like a lot of like crazy shit, like you wouldn't think. But like, there's not to mention like he was in like Fairly Odd Parents as the genie, right? Everybody knows that.
Yeah.
And when he did die, I did make a cool post on Reddit like, "You're free now, genie." With the Timmy Turner genie. I thought it was a pretty good play. But what surprises me even more about Norm is that he acts in like a lot of things that like are completely like mainstream, like you wouldn't normally like get into if you're like more of like an edgy like internet user like us, me and Tom, it's just we talk in the third person. We're kind of cool and quirky like that. But he's in stuff like The Middle, which is, for everyone who doesn't know or doesn't watch media that's like broadcasted on a fucking tin wire, is a show that is basically a 1-to-1 ripoff of like Malcolm in the Middle, but it's told from the perspective of the mom. And he's like one of the cousins. He's like the cousin, or like their uncle, right? So he's Uncle Norm, and he's just in a couple of the episodes as just like a cameo. And it's like, why?
Wait, is
like,
his name
why
just
does he
Uncle
need to
Norm?
do this? I don't know if his name's actually Uncle Norm, but it's just him. It's just him in his normal voice. Like, he's not like putting on a show or anything. It's like, clearly he got paid like the big bucks, and he's just like, he's not phoning it in because he's fucking funny as shit. But like, it's just one of those things that like, it's out of pocket. Yeah, it's the same thing with the fucking YouTube comedy fucking week or whatever the hell he was in.
Oh my god! Everyone always talks about the "all the stars are here" moment, but I think the funniest part of that thing is when he's like, everyone always talks about they go back in time and fucking kill Hitler or whatever, Yeah. I'd be afraid I'd get lost in his fucking eyes. Because he's talking about how everyone always talks about how he's like the world's greatest speaker. So he's like, I don't know, maybe he'd get me too. He got all of fucking Germany.
Yeah.
He's a good
Why
man.
do you have to go? Why do you have to go, Tom?
Well, it was because of the plutonium-laced round.
Yeah, that you did shoot him with. But I guess that's not technically... Because he didn't die of cancer. He died of leukemia, right? That's how everyone dies. Plutonium. Yeah. But I did bawl my eyes out like that one e-celebrity, iJustine, when fucking Zuckerberg, or whoever the fuck she likes, died.
Zuckerberg died.
Yeah, when Zuckerberg died, and iJustine fucking cried her eyes out because the guy who made the Apple products, Zuckerberg, died. And it was very heartbreaking and tragic and funny. So that's why she cried and made a video out of it. And I did the exact same thing with Norm. And
she cried on an airplane.
She didn't cry on an airplane. She cried in like a cafe with her friend, right?
Yeah. Or, she did some like weird. I think she danced around like doing a music video on an airplane. Yeah,
she started singing. Grandpa's gonna sue the pants off of Santa, and it didn't make any sense because there was no context for it at the time. But then when she got the contract to Grandpa, she said sign, but the Grandpa said sign. I'd rather sing. And then he started to sing.
She was like, "What the fuck are you doing, you demented old man?"
Yeah, and she beat an old man to death allegedly. I like using the word allegedly. It sounds clean.
Yeah,
it's like the N-word.
We can't.
I like how you glossed over what I said, Tom.
Well, yeah, because it's funny because it's true.
It's funny because it's true. It's just true. I love words.
I like the idea of like we can't slander Cousin Mel.
Who? No, we can't. No, Tom, I have to cut that. Tom, we can't mention Cousin Mel. If we do, big bucks of fucking guy is gonna sue the pants off of Santa, and then it's all gonna go downhill, Tom. We can't have that. Grandma's got to come back. She's got to get her memory back, dude. You can't fucking do this to me, Tom. All right?
I love it. How the fuck did a song about like an old lady fucking getting killed, like walking home from fucking Christmas dinner,
become so popular?
Yeah, get a fucking.
It's iconic.
Movie.
It's good. It's a good
Coming
song.
home from our house Christmas Eve.
We begged her not to go. Please don't go. That's my favorite fucking part. They reiterate what's happening in the fucking song, and it's hilarious.
I also like how the part of the song is then like the whole family decides they all hate Santa Claus.
Yeah, and I think the best part out of all of that is that they do an Etch-a-Sketch drawing of their missing grandma, and that somehow enters the interwebs to allow Santa to be like, oh, this Etch-a-Sketch drawing of your grandma reminds me of the lady I bashed over the head and put into my own...
The lady, the small woman I abducted.
Yeah.
Why does he have a special care unit specifically for slave victims? Does he do this often?
Because of insurance purposes, right? Because like if you had to go to the ER, you'd have to pay out the fucking wazoo. It makes more financial sense to own your own medical clinic and be like, and we'll just ship her to the fucking pole.
Well, isn't Santa like a billionaire? He's an elite.
Santa is like a god. He's like a demigod, right? You said he's like a demi-human or god.
He's a demi-human.
Yeah, you said something or other like that, and I didn't believe you at the time. But then you showed me that Kris Kringle, in fact, is a vampire, so I guess that does make him kind of demi-human.
That's fucking Billy and Mandy.
I know it is. I know it is. Shut up, Tom. Don't fucking point out my references. Blackula. What's that from, Tom? Elaborate more, huh?
Blackula? I don't actually know what that's from.
He's also in Billy and Mandy.
Oh, is he? Oh, yeah! There's no way that character is called fucking Blackula.
Yeah, he goes, I don't
suck.
What is it?
Bite.
Suck. I lick.
Bite,
I lick.
Bite and lick.
Scrape and lick. Something like
then
that.
Then bite and lick the fucking poison out, man.
Billy and Mandy's great. You guys should watch it. I don't know what the age demographic of our audience is. I assume it's like toddlers with like attention spans longer than. Yeah, I think. Well, actually, you know what I think, Tom? I think our audience members are actually like, you know how like pregnant ladies like put headsets on their tummies so that they have like Mozart playing in the background. I think that's our target demographic right now because of how young we are. It's just like
pregnant women are putting this against their stomachs.
Yeah, because that's how it works, right? The younger you are, the younger your audience members are, and so we're so young and virile that, as Alex Eek would put it, we're so young and virile. And viral. Let's be honest, we're getting pretty viral right now. Our podcast is doing serious numbers, and I just wanted to do a quick shout out and get rid of this bit I was doing and just say thank you, the viewer. You know, because we don't thank the viewer enough, and I love it when cringy YouTubers say thank you, and that's what's happening right now. So thank you, genuine. No, that's real.
Peach is saying bad bit. We gotta stop this.
Yeah. Yeah, but not to sound disingenuous. It is pretty fucking shocking. Not because I think we should talk about this, right? Because we'll just we'll do a little thing right here, but I think we can talk about it more in the future once this becomes an even bigger thing or it fucking stagnates. Who knows? It's hard to tell with the internet. But as it stands right now, this podcast we've been uploading it to YouTube. We're gonna upload it to other things once we get the works and the kinks, done on that, But as far as we can tell, the podcast is making serious numbers, all right? We're basically like money machines right now. But
I just bought a mansion.
Yeah, you bought a YouTuber mansion. And
I bought a content house.
So we have concurrently we have like about, I'd say, a solid base of like 150 people viewing. Some people watch it all the way, some people watch segments. That's neither here nor there. It's what it is. I like podcasts as a format because you can just pick and choose which ones you want to listen to or how long you want to listen to them. Or what I recommend doing is listening to them at night so you sleep and we still get all the watch time. Please do that. Yeah. Please have us in your ears when you're sleeping.
Okay, this is actually a good thing that you will help you sleep better while you listen to our stuff. Because if you don't do this, then the episode will end. And then you'll move on to something else that might not be good for your sleeping. So in the corner of a YouTube video, there's the three dots. You can click on that. It'll bring up a menu. Click on more options, and then you turn on. There's an option that says loop. You just turn that on. And you should do that on all of your computer monitors. If you have an iPad, do it on that, and you just leave them running.
And open up like YouTube on your TV, smart device, or like Fire Stick, and just have our podcast blaring.
If you got
it has to be blaring.
If you got a smart fridge, do it on there.
Yes, and like we said, it has to be at 90 decibels or higher, or you're not going to get the experience of what this podcast can really provide for you, which is making you better as an artist. This podcast, this is not even like a Red Bull ad. This is real. If you listen to our podcast, you will become a better artist. And I can't say that legitimately because that is technically lies, and we could get sued for that. So listening to this podcast does not make you a better artist. In fact, I think it makes you a worse artist, and you should stop listening now. And but our podcast is making serious numbers. We got cool viewership, and it's just cool. I like it. I'm glad that we're having fun with it, and we're seeing the fruits of our labor so early on in development. You don't really get to see that a lot, especially in this digital age where everyone's trying to make it big. But I think a lot of people can tell that we do put in effort to this podcast, as well as just like the things we talk about and the soon-to-be guests that you'll see later on, because we're talking about this in the future past. It doesn't make sense to you listening to this now, obviously, but we do have guests that are lined up that have already been shown, and I hope that we get more guests, and this thing just becomes like a nice ebb and flow thing that we can keep up, and it feels good, because at the end of the day, the reason we made this podcast is like twofold, which was, one, we just wanted to make something that can be relatively streamlined, and it's just good, and people like it, and we can be creative in it, right? And then the second reason we made this podcast is me and Tom both agreed, like, there's just not enough podcasts. But what we really mean is there's not enough like artist podcasts. Like,
there's like none.
The best you can like find is like Drawfee, and even then they're more focused on the drawing aspect of what they're doing rather than talking about like the nitty gritty of how to make it in this fucking weird like self-promotion cesspool that is the internet / maybe trying to make it in the actual industry. And there's some not industry heads, but there's some people who work in the industry rather in this server that I would very much love to talk to in future. And this is kind of my like call out to them if they're listening to this podcast, but also I do know some of them, so I'll be reaching out to them eventually. And it'd be really nice to get like some more hands-on experience of like talking to people who have, done art for like 30, 20 years and have gone out of their way to like work for like storyboard artists or people who animate and make cells and stuff like that. But needless to say, it's really nice that we're able to make something that we want, that fills that void in this kind of weird vacant space right now where a lot of YouTubers are retiring or they're just like, going to the wayside. And honestly, the reason I wanted to make this podcast was originally because my favorite podcast in the world, Sleepycast, ended when I was in high school. Can you imagine? I was listening to Sleepycast in high school. The thing, you shouldn't be listening to our podcast in high school. If you're listening to it right now, click off, put your phone in a vault. Yeah, and when you turn 18, that vault opens, and then you can continue listening right now. Okay, now you've hit the play button again. So, now that you're 18 and you're listening to our podcast, not illegally, welcome, new viewer. And also, that's why we made the podcast, is because I wanted something like Sleepycast, where they do talk about stuff that matters to artists, as well as like, shoot the shit, like we're doing now. And, it's very wholesome. Yeah. It's very nice. It's very cute. It's very Doge 100 and all those words. Waffles.
Makes me spit bubbles.
It makes you gurgle. I don't know. Do you want to say anything to the viewers, Tom? As I would put it.
Buy Bitcoin. Buy Ethereum Max. This is not an ad. Yeah. I don't know, just thank you for watching. I'm just very happy seeing the success of the podcast. So we only posted, at the time of recording this, we only posted 2 episodes, and it's already doing very well. Much better than, okay, so to give you an idea, my mom has a podcast. There's a little ARG for you to track that down.
Don't do that, please.
There's no way you could. There's no connection. But anyway,
it's a crime podcast because it's his mom. Haha. Right? No, who knows?
She posts her podcast episodes to YouTube, and I think her videos get on average like 1 to 5 views per uploads of her podcast. So that's what I was expecting us to get. I was like, yeah, we're gonna post it and we're gonna get like 2 views, and that'll be decent because it's a start. No, we're at like almost 150 views on episode 1.
Yeah, and people commenting and really caring, and and I'll say this much to anyone who's also trying to look at making it big on the internet, which I kind of roll my eyes at, because the point of any creative thing is not to make
with 300 views total.
Yeah, but like what I'm saying is don't let like success kind of warp your perspective, or just like have this weird trajectory in your mind, because like we said like early on as well as just right now, is the internet is not the end all be all like measure of success, right? It should be just a stepping stone, or a place where you can upload your art and you can have it archived, right? I find it strange that a lot of people are comfortable with the internet, and I get it to some extent because it has become a lot more profitable, as well as just as far as like the individual basis, right? But I feel like what we should really be doing isn't necessarily like side-eyeing the internet, but like it should be used as a tool like everything else in the industry to allow you to create even bigger and better stuff with even grander scale, because that's how you end up with like these masterclass pieces that are remembered for all of time. And I think that's, to some extent, I feel like that's the real like goal, not even if you're an artist, but if you are art itself. The goal of art is to last longer than the creator of it, right? And that's what I think every artist isn't necessarily striving for when they make art, but it sure as shit what's going to happen to your art whether you like it or not. And the more effort and time and like less kind of weird mindsets you have around your art, and you just focus on the real stuff at hand, the real creation aspect of it, it can really do wonders for you, not only mentally but like with your creative output, as well as just being not satisfied with your art but being proud of your art, and knowing that even if this thing doesn't last longer than me, that like this podcast for instance, we've had people invest their time into it, so that means a lot to me, especially coming from someone who like grew up with the internet kind of midway through their life, and has had creative people in my life kind of spark that fire in me to want to make something that lights the torch for other people out there. And that's what this podcast is for.
The biggest compliment that I ever get in general is, I don't know if it's even necessarily intended as a compliment, but it's what it is. People are like, "Oh, your drawing inspired me to draw this." That just like makes my fucking heart flutter. It just means that I was so impactful on someone that they fucking created something in response.
Yeah, and I think to kind of wrap this podcast up, we should talk about how me and Tom met, because we haven't really talked about that. So a brief synopsis, kind of to wrap this whole podcast up. Me and Tom met because we liked listening to a fucking podcast. We listened to The Create Unknown, which is a venture by Vsauce2 Michael and Matthew Tabor.
It's not Michael.
They are what Michael? What did I say?
You said Vsauce2 Michael.
Did I say his wrong name?
Yeah. Kevin
Lieber. Kevin Lieber. Holy shit. That's like saying the wrong girl's name in bed. Holy hell. I didn't mean that, alright? I love his work.
The reason that made me laugh so much wasn't just because of that, but because in my head I visualized, like, you're laying in bed with a girl and she rolls over.
I'm saying Kevin Lieber over and over again?
No. It's like the afterglow, like you're just laying next to each other in bed, she's like facing away from you, and then she like rolls over and it's Michael Vsauce's face.
And he says, "Hi, welcome, hey. Vsauce here."
He goes, "Hey, Vsauce, Michael here."
That's a really good impression. But
what is cum?
Yeah, it's in me. But that joke goes on multiple levels if you know me personally. But needless to say, we we watched the Creative Known separately. We decided to both go out of our way to go to the Discord of the Create Unknown, and we both started kind of like seeing what other people who like to Create Unknown were talking about, and then we did a little bit of back and forth. I saw Tom's art for the first time. I was like, it was the first art in a long time that I like actively saw, because when I met Tom on the TCU Discord, I was at a very low point in my creative process because I was very much focused on no more silly internet stuff. I'm just gonna focus on getting a career and a house and 2.5 kids, which I still do want that in my life. But I learned after talking with Tom is I need to be active. Like, I have to have an active balance and understand the internet isn't evil. The way you use it can be, right? Mm-hmm. And the reason I stopped doing art for the longest time was because I was reliant on the internet for the dopamines and shit, and being proud of oh, someone liked my art, that's so good. And then all it took was one guy who I really respected, who I talked to a lot, to tell me yeah, I hope you're not posting your art to any social media platforms, because this looks like Christian Handler art. And it broke my heart to my very core. And
that's so
and then I was I just ended up telling the guy, I was well, I guess my art's even worse than that, because I don't have millions of fans fawning over my bad art, so I guess I'll just stop. And that's what happened.
Wow,
I just stopped doing art for a year.
Who the fuck?
Yeah.
Can you
not ideal. No, I'm not going to dox them. I'm better than that. Hell, we might even have them on the podcast if they're still doing art.
Why?
Nah, because it'd be funny.
I hate art. I hate artists, and everyone should quit if they're not perfect.
Yeah, but and that was when I was 18, 17 or something like that. But not to be mean towards the guy, and this is kind of derailing the story, but it's funny enough because I also met that guy online. You wanna know how I met him online? Was through the Oni Plays Minecraft server that was popping off when fucking Oni Plays was doing Minecraft, and they're Tomar opened up his server for the second time in a millennia. And all he wanted to do autistically was build the Shire or fucking Lord of the Rings places. I was oh, that's fun, that's neat, that's cool, that's creative. And I was I don't really do a lot of good building in Minecraft, but I can do all the redstone stuff. So I built little cool contraptions and drawbridges and all that cool shit. Anyways, needless to say, me and Tom met on the internet. I saw his art. It inspired me to create art for him on the 3DS. Because I was a lot of artists that I use the 3DS starting out and to animate, and I really want to animate, so I animated him some cool Isabelle stuff, and the rest is fucking history, folks. You're listening to it right now.
You know what's crazy? I didn't know all of this lore. I assumed that you had just been doing 3DS stuff in general, and had been doing art in general, and you just happened to stumble. I didn't know I had this kind of effect, and that makes me that's incredible. I genuinely didn't realize.
Yeah, Tom, you were the spark in my what I would describe as the people making. Well, I was gonna say more akin to you were the spark in my flour factory that caused a massive explosion because of the way flour combusts, and you killed a lot of negative emotions in me and outshot a beautiful flame. Right?
Yeah,
something like that.
I'm glad I've been able to have such a positive impact. You've had just as much of an impact on me. The craziest thing was I think we mentioned it. We had a big meetup where we just had people get together from fucking across the country. Got all together in fucking Connecticut for a furry convention, and it was so good. Honestly, the convention wasn't even the main attraction. A lot of the more fun parts were just us chilling out in the house and talking.
Yeah, or like walking the strip.
Oh
Just
yeah,
like
that was
having
great.
fun. Mm-hmm.
I never
Me and
thought
Crazy
I'd never
actually
do
found a
anything
cool
like that.
cafe, and it was a lot of fun. And we're gonna have more fun on our next artist meetup. And yeah, and I'll say this much: for those wondering, like, why the fuck would you ever want to meet up with your friends IRL if you're like a cool,
Why would
if
you?
you're like a cool guy with,
You know what? I wouldn't even respond to that. I'd be like, "Why?" My response to that is, "Why wouldn't you want to do that?" It's like this. Isn't
yeah,
that like the dream?
it really is, and it does kind of hamper our budget because we could, like, you probably think to yourself like you could be spending this money on like more creative projects or like saving it for like a retirement or whatever. But as someone who finds that creative stuff flourishes through experiences, I think meetups like this are extraordinarily important. And I don't talk about this a lot, but a person, like an artist in my life that I try to copy the most is Tom Fulp, and there's a lot I could go into about like talking about Tom Fulp because he's just a very fascinating man. Um, and he has like not only that, he's super successful in the fields that he is doing, and he's married, he has kids, and he's the guy. He did it all, right? He's kind of like the Walt, like for most people, some people would like perceive Walt Disney as like this super cool guy because he's like he had a family, he created this whole industry of animation, and you really look up to the guy. But for me, that person is Tom Fulp because he's like my modern day Walt Disney, where he does a lot of things out of his way and out of pocket to create more creativity, right? And not a lot of people understand that um, you can create creativity. More so, you can create the passion for creativity through stuff like hosting an event like Pico Day, or hosting an event like we did for this server, or a myriad of other things like like Tom Full paying for artists to do art so that they can post it on his website, or like me paying artists on this server so that they know that their art is not only appreciated, but when I tell someone on this server flat out, like, hey, you could be making like a really cool comic with this or just anything and make a serious amount of money, and they kind of like, they don't scoff at me, but they're like, yeah, that'd be nice, but that costs money, and I will give them money just to make anything that they want, or to make something for at least a friend of a friend, so that way I know it's going to something, and they're making the things that they love, and they're getting paid for it, because that's what fucking matters in this shitty economic
In this bitch of a
dystopian
world.
fucking, yeah, cyberpunk-esque nonsense cryptocurrency up my ass world. um I'm glad we can bookend this podcast on cryptocurrency as a funny joke. Yeah, you got anything else, Tom, about that?
Not really. It's just it's. I guess the one thing I'll say is just the fact that like I've always wanted to go on like long fucking cross country trips. Like that's been something I've always wanted to do. So that meetup was in that way like a little bit of a dream fulfillment for me. Of like I'm going out on
Mm-hmm.
my own vacation without my family, all on my own, and
Bucket
fucking
list,
doing
baby.
something.
Yeah,
It was very exciting to have that experience.
and hopefully we can keep it up, and hopefully I'm what, like in like this fucking like fairy tale world, Tom, right? Not to like have like grandiose ideals for this podcast, because at the end of the day, the reason I make this podcast is so that I can improve my own skills as an artist. But like a weird grandiose way, I hope that one of these days, somewhere down the line, like 5 years, 10 years from now, we're somewhat successful enough to where the creative stuff we do, we at very much least break even, and not only even break even, but it allows us to spend more money on people like us starting out, who don't necessarily have just people that, the safety nets, right? People don't have a lot of safety nets when it comes to art, and it's not necessarily a worthwhile venture to go into, um, because there's just not a lot of it's just a weird industry that has a lot of pitfalls and things you don't necessarily look out for. And this podcast hopefully can serve to like, you know, maybe hopefully show you where the pitfalls lie, where the new ones come from, and maybe even just a little bit if we do become successful enough, maybe helping you guys out in some weird way by allowing you to meet up with us, to talk with us in person and like understand like, hey, you pitch us a show. And hell, if we get even super, like, this is like pie in the sky, Tom, where we get so successful that we can then start making our own shows, or hopefully um finding the diamonds in the rough and being like, you deserve a show, let's make a show. And then it just keeps on growing. And that's like with any creative
Yeah.
thing, we want go big or go home.
Frankly, for me personally, if we can just get to the point where we have a couple thousand people who listen to it as background noise, that'll be enough for me to be happy. Everything beyond that is just fucking, icing.
I'm too much of a metagamer, Tom, in the real world. I always think about the big picture. I'm a big picture kind of guy, but also I'm a little picture kind of guy, and I understand that there's steps that we need to take into place before we actually get to that point. But goddamn, would it not just be like the most euphoric, like, wow, it started here and now we're there, like we're fucking there. Like that's the dream. But right now, right here, we're just gonna be uploading episodes and it's gonna be fun. But yeah.
Yeah, of course. That's how you gotta start. You just have fucking fun.
Yeah. And even I'll say this much: even if the goal is to make like a business or whatever out of art, right? Whatever. But at the very least, it should be like, you don't want the money necessarily so that you can become rich. You want the money so you can make more art, right? Because that's the passion. That's what's behind
also,
there.
You know what? This is actually related to that. This is something I was talking to that weirdo that I had to kick off the server earlier today. Something that people will get bogged down in is trying to like appeal to an audience. Like they'll think really hard about like, what should I draw to like appeal to people. And the thing is, like, you don't really at least after you've gotten your first like 100 followers or whatever, you don't really need to think about that at all, because the internet is such a big place that there will be like-minded people that will just like the stuff that you make. Like, it doesn't matter what you make, what you're interested in. It doesn't matter what characters you draw. There will
you have to be your first fan.
like it.
Yeah. That's what that means. You have to be your first fan. But yeah.
The response to me, I guess, would be, that's easy for you to say because you draw fucking Isabelle, so everyone likes that character anyway. But I think that applies to everything. I really do. I get that it can be harder for OCs, but then my response is like, okay, well, if you're gonna do fan art of characters you already genuinely like and want to do fan art of anyway. Don't go out of your way to be like, who do I draw?
And let's kind of dig a little deeper on that. Like, just for the last 5 minutes of the podcast, let's go beyond the veil, right? Because that is such a cynic look of like, oh, you just draw something that everyone will like, so that's how you get a shit ton of views. But I think genuinely, if your goal is to like reach out to artists or just like anyone who has like the eye, we should talk about that later on, the eye for art, because it's like an ability you gain over time. But when you have the eye to like, because when I met Tom for the first time and I saw his art, my immediate reaction wasn't, oh, that's Isabelle, that's cute, because I have the eye for it. I was like, oh my god, this is drawn really amazing. Like, the line is so good, and like I can look at all these like weird connecting pieces to the art. So like it becomes less of like the surface level stuff of like, yes, my mind recognizes that that's Isabelle, but my brain realizes all of the intricacies and like the levels of which this person has like the skill to make this. Like, this isn't some Joe Schmo that made Isabelle for fun. This is someone who's been drawing for a long time, and I can see that. It's a weird thing you can start to notice, especially when you start becoming more creative, especially in the drawing scene. But the more you know about a medium, the the like better your eye and your perception becomes of like seeing how something is made and like how long it takes.